Sometimes it's not the world outside that questions us. Sometimes it's the people from within. The ones who once stood beside us now whisper doubts behind us. There's something powerful that happens when a man stands up and says, I decide what it means. There's something about quiet strength that doesn't make the headlines. It's not flashy. It's not loud. It doesn't chase attention. But it stays. It endures. And in the end, it writes a story. Because in this life, the truth is simple. Those who stay when it's hard shape history. Those who remain consistent when it's easier to quit define what matters. In a world that rewards speed, popularity, and instant applause, consistency is often overlooked. People chase what feels good, what looks successful, and what earns claps. But feelings fade, trends change, and applause, it doesn't last. Comfort is temporary, but consistency, that's legacy. You don't build a home by showing up once. You don't grow love by speaking beautiful words one day and walking away the next. And you certainly don't leave a mark on this world by doing what's easy all the time. True impact is made by those who show up again and again, even when they're tired, even when no one is watching, even when people doubt them, even when their name isn't trending. They keep going, not because they always feel strong, but because they've made a choice to be. Comfort tells you to stay where it's warm. Comfort tells you not to speak out when your voice shakes. Comfort tells you to stop trying when the world doesn't clap. But the ones who make a difference are the ones who refuse to be controlled by comfort. They understand that real growth happens in the uncomfortable, that real purpose is born in the silent, unseen moments, that history is shaped not by how easy the journey was, but by how many times they kept walking when it would have been easier to sit down. There's something sacred about showing up when you don't feel like it, choosing kindness when your heart is broken, speaking truth when your voice feels weak, staying when you have every reason to run. These are the small decisions that never trend, but they build a life worth remembering. Consistency may not feel glamorous, but it is powerful. Because every time you show up, you are making a statement. I will not be defined by feelings. I will not be led by fear. I am not doing this for applause. I'm doing this because it matters. The truth is, anyone can show up when it's exciting. Anyone can speak up when everyone agrees. Anyone can act brave when there's no risk. But the ones who shape generations are the ones who remain when it's boring, when it's hard, when it's lonely. The ones who don't quit just because it got quiet. Because consistency is not about perfection. It's about presence. It's not about always getting it right. It's about not giving up when you get it wrong. You're not always going to feel strong. You're not always going to be inspired. You're not always going to hear thank you. But if you keep showing up to your calling, to your family, to your principles, to your growth, then one day people will look back and realize you were writing history the whole time, not by shouting, not by impressing, but by staying. The world doesn't remember the most comfortable. It remembers the most consistent. The ones who didn't just talk about love, they lived it. The ones who didn't just promise change, they embodied it. The ones who weren't perfect, but they were present. So wherever you are right now, if you feel like no one sees your effort, if you feel like giving up would be easier, if you feel like consistency isn't worth it, let this remind you. You are not wasting your time. You are building something unshakable. History is not written by the loudest voice. It's written by the quiet soul who refused to give up, by the hands that kept working, by the heart that kept loving, by the spirit that kept standing. Even when comfort said, sit down, and that is the kind of life that won't be forgotten. There will be moments in your life when the vision in your heart won't make sense to anyone else. People will question it. Some will mock it. Others will tell you it's impossible, too ambitious, too unrealistic. And maybe there will even be a moment when you begin to wonder if they're right. But that's when you need to remember this. You weren't given that vision by accident. It didn't just fall into your mind one random day. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a coincidence. It was placed there intentionally, purposefully, because there's something inside you strong enough to carry it. Owning your vision takes courage, because vision is rarely visible to others in the beginning. When all they see is a seed, you see the forest. When all they hear is silence, you already hear the music. When all they know is what has been, you're already reaching for what could be. And that can be lonely, because vision requires you to walk ahead. Sometimes it means taking the first step when the path hasn't been built yet. Sometimes it means walking away from what's familiar to chase what's greater. And often it means choosing faith over fear, even when fear has more evidence. There will be people who won't understand why you're trying so hard. They'll ask, why not settle? Why not play it safe? Why not just be content with what's in front of you? But when you have vision, you're not just living for what's in front of you, you're living for what's within you. You see, the world will always have opinions. People will always have something to say, but at the end of the day, you are the one who has to live with the weight of dreams unfulfilled and callings ignored. So choose courage, even if your voice shakes when you speak it aloud, even if your hands tremble when you take the first step, even if no one claps, even if no one believes. Because vision doesn't require a crowd to begin. It just needs your yes. You don't need the approval of everyone. You need alignment with your purpose. You don't need perfect conditions. You need persistent faith. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to keep showing up with a willing heart. And every time you choose courage over comfort, you grow. You rise. You become the kind of person who leads, not follows, who builds, not borrows, who creates, not copies. Courage doesn't mean you're never afraid. It means you believe the dream is bigger than the fear. It means you trust that what's ahead of you is worth walking through the fire for. Because nothing truly meaningful is built without struggle, and nothing truly powerful is created without resistance. There will be tears, there will be sleepless nights, there will be times when quitting feels easier than continuing, but every great story has those chapters. And if you can just hold on, if you can just keep turning the page, you'll discover that the struggle didn't come to stop you, it came to shape you. The vision will test your character before it rewards your effort. It will stretch your patience, challenge your pride, confront your insecurities. But it will also grow your strength, sharpen your focus, and deepen your faith. And one day, you'll look back, not at the applause, not at the success, not at the achievements, but at the person you became in the process. You'll remember the days you almost gave up, and you'll be proud that you didn't. You'll remember the voices that told you to quit, and you'll be grateful you listened to your own. You'll remember how uncertain the journey looked, but how certain your heart felt, and that's when you'll realize. The vision was never just about the goal, it was about building the courage. Keep your heart open and keep showing up, because the world doesn't need more people who play it safe. It needs more people who are brave enough to believe in what hasn't been seen yet. And maybe that person is you. There was a time when words were just words, simple, empty, repeated often but rarely lived. But then some words come along and they echo deeper, they mean something more. America, to some, it's a slogan, to others, a debate. But for the ones who understand its weight, it's not about politics. It's about people. Because putting your country first isn't about closing doors to the world. It's about opening your eyes to what's happening inside your own home. It's the decision to look at your streets before looking at foreign borders. It's about hearing the cries of your own citizens before trying to solve the world's problem. It's not selfishness, it's stewardship. Before you can take care of the world, you need to care for your own. Before you can lend a helping hand, you need to make sure your own house is standing strong. Because if your foundation is broken, how can you help someone else build theirs? People will always have something to say. They'll argue, they'll protest, they'll politicize. But truth doesn't shake in the presence of noise. When you say America first, you're not turning your back on humanity. You're simply saying, let me start where I live. Let me fix what's broken under my own roof. It means giving the single mother working 2 jobs a fighting chance. It means making sure the farmer doesn't lose his land. It means ensuring that the veteran who risked everything doesn't return to nothing. It's about looking into the tired eyes of the factory worker who still believes in the promise of this nation and telling him, we haven't forgotten you. It's easy to be a leader who wants to save the world. It's noble. It sounds inspiring, but sometimes the greatest leadership is doing the quiet work, the unnoticed work, the hard work of rebuilding what others walked away from. There's something sacred about choosing to care for your own people. Not because they're better, not because they're more important, but because they are your responsibility. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't give what you no longer have. And a nation that forgets its own won't have much left to offer. So when the critics say it's too narrow, remember, focus is not the enemy of compassion. And just because you care deeply for what's yours doesn't mean you don't care at all for others. We're living in a time where being grounded is mistaken for being closed-minded. But standing firm in your identity doesn't make you closed. It makes you clear. You know who you are. You know who you serve. And you know why you're standing. America First is not a wall that blocks out the world. It's a reminder of where your heart belongs, where your duty lies, where your roots are planted. And maybe if more of us started where we are, we'd be able to do more good out there. Because real strength doesn't come from stretching yourself thin. It comes from being deeply rooted, from knowing what you value, from protecting what matters. This isn't about waving a flag for attention. It's about holding the weight of it with reverence. It's about walking through your hometown and knowing, these are the lives I've been called to protect. This is the soil I've been asked to guard. These are the dreams I've been trusted to carry. The world will always be watching. And yes, there's a place for global partnerships, for diplomacy, for generosity beyond borders. But none of that means anything if we can't take care of our own. So maybe America First is not a closing statement. It's a beginning, a commitment, a vow that before we look outward, we will look inward. Before we run toward applause, we'll return to responsibility. And before we try to change the world, we'll make sure the heart of our own nation is still beating. Because the real test of leadership is not how far you can reach, but how closely you can care. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest way to love the world is to never stop loving home. Sometimes the loudest battles don't happen between enemies. They happen between friends. Between people who once stood shoulder to shoulder, but now find themselves standing on opposite ends of the same belief. It's heartbreaking, isn't it? When the very people who once believed in the same cause begin to question each other. When unity starts to look like a fragile thread instead of a strong chain. When silence creeps into the spaces where once there was shared purpose. But maybe it removes the comfort of being unchallenged and invites us into something deeper than agreement, conviction. We often think that peace means silence, that unity means everyone nodding to the same tune. But what if real unity isn't the absence of disagreement, but the decision to keep walking forward, even when we don't all see the same picture clearly yet? Sometimes, the people who question us the most are the ones who care the most. They're not always trying to break us. Sometimes they're just trying to understand where we're headed. And that's not weakness. That's a moment of refining. Because when we are challenged from within, it doesn't have to destroy us. It can sharpen us. It can remind us why we began. It can pull us back to the foundation, to the truth that got buried under the noise and numbers and headlines. If the vision is real, it will withstand question. If the mission is right, it will endure criticism. If the purpose is pure, it will survive division. And not just survive, It will come out stronger on the other side. So don't be afraid of the tension. Don't run from the uncomfortable conversations. Don't shut the door just because someone inside the room dares to ask why. Sometimes, purpose needs to be questioned so it can be clarified. Sometimes, we forget what we're building until someone reminds us we've drifted. Sometimes, internal division is not a sign of collapse. It's a sign that what we're doing matters enough to wrestle over. Because comfort never built anything that lasted. And pretending to agree never led to real growth. It's easy to lead when everyone is clapping. It's easy to believe when no one's challenging you. But real strength is found in the fire. When your vision is tested not by strangers, but by those you once called allies. Will you still believe when they question you? Will you still stay when the support grows quiet? Will you still choose purpose over pride, even when it costs you the approval you once leaned on? That's the test. And the truth is, anything worth building will face this moment. The moment where unity feels more like effort than ease. The moment where the team isn't cheering anymore. The moment where even those closest to you seem unsure. But this moment is not your undoing, it's your becoming. Because in this moment, you're asked to decide, is this just a passion? Or is this a purpose? Is this something you do when it feels good? Or is this who you are when it feels hard? Let the questions come. Let the doubts surface. Let the disagreements rise. But don't let your heart harden. Don't let your mission blur. Don't let the noise convince you to quit. Instead, choose to listen. Choose to learn. Choose to stand. Because unity isn't built in the absence of struggle. It's built in the decision to keep walking together even after the struggle. And those who pass through that fire, they don't just survive. They lead. They build. They last. So if you're facing division right now, take heart. It might just mean your purpose is being strengthened. And on the other side of this test, you won't just remember who stood with you. You'll remember who you became. Not in the easy days, not in the popular moments, but in the quiet tests where purpose had to speak louder than pride. Leadership is not a title. It's not about being in front of the line, having the spotlight, or being the loudest voice in the room. It's not reserved for the ones who have the most followers, the best speeches, or the sharpest suits. True leadership begins long before the applause. And it often grows in the shadows, where no one sees the sacrifice, where no one counts the tears. You see, people think leadership is about control, about giving orders, making the final decision, and getting the last word. But real leadership, it's about service. It's about responsibility. It's about choosing what's right, even when it's not easy. It's about choosing, and it's about responsibility. It's about choosing to be right. Then it's about pulling back. About making sure that the culture stays steady. 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 About making sure that the culture stays steady, even when it's lonely. Because leadership is not tested in moments of comfort. It's tested when things fall apart, when there's confusion, when people are afraid, when no one knows what's coming next. That's when a true leader rises. Not because they have all the answers, but because they're willing to stand up when others sit down, because they're willing to be the calm in the middle of chaos. Because they understand that being in charge doesn't mean being served. It means serving harder than anyone else. A true leader doesn't say, look at me. They say, follow me, not for attention, but to show others a way through the storm. And sometimes, leadership means making decisions that no one will understand right away. Sometimes it means choosing long-term strength over short-term approval. Sometimes it means being misunderstood, being judged, being questioned. But real leaders don't lead for applause. They lead because they believe in something bigger than themselves. They lead because they can't walk away when others are counting on them. They lead because there's a fire inside them that says this matters. And you can't teach that kind of leadership in a classroom. You can't fake it with charm or charisma, because eventually the truth shows. When pressure comes, the mask falls off. And the only thing left is character. That's what leadership is built on. Character, consistency, compassion. It's about walking the talk, not just when people are watching, but especially when they're not. It's choosing humility when pride would be easier. It's choosing forgiveness when blame feels better. It's choosing to protect when it would be easier to protect yourself. Leadership doesn't always feel powerful. In fact, most of the time it feels heavy. Because when you're a leader, you carry more than your own burden. You carry the fears, hopes, and dreams of others. You carry their trust. And trust, it's fragile. It's earned. And once broken, it's hard to rebuild. That's why real leaders are careful not just with their words, but with their actions. They know their choices don't just affect them. The power of leadership doesn't come from position. It comes from permission. The permission people give you to influence them, to guide them, to speak into their lives. And that permission, it's sacred. It's not about perfection. It's not about never making mistakes. It's about owning those mistakes when they happen. It's about saying, I was wrong, when pride wants to hide. It's about showing others that strength and vulnerability can exist in the same person. A real leader doesn't lead from above. They lead from among. They don't demand respect. They earn it. They don't manipulate emotions. They inspire hearts. So if you ever find yourself in a place where people are looking to you, even just one person, that is leadership. And it's not something to be taken lightly, because the greatest impact you'll ever have won't come from what you build with your hands, but from who you raise up with your life. And years from now, people may not remember your achievements. They may not recall your titles, your awards, or your public wins, but they will remember how you made them feel. They will remember if you stood with them when it mattered, if you spoke truth when it was costly, if you chose to lead with integrity when no one else did. That is the power of leadership. It's quiet, but it's loud in its legacy. It's slow, but it's lasting. And it's not about how far you go, but how many people rise because you chose to lead. So let the critics speak, let the allies question, but never let the vision shake. Because when a leader says, I decide what it means, they're not silencing others. They're owning the weight of what it means to lead. And that, my friends, isn't just political strength. That is moral courage.